me for making his triumphant return to the show after what we realized was 5 crazy years, Mr. Rob Vincent. Rob, thanks for coming back, man.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. It's
I
good to chat with you again.
Yeah, it was insane. We were thinking about this. We saw that you were announced as the assistant coach, and I was like, oh, we just talked to him. And then I looked back, I was like, no, we just talked to him when he started at the academy. And I was
Yeah,
like, well, that seems like that was yesterday. No, it was 2018.
yeah. No, for me, it feels like a lot's happened in that time. So I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot more. But yeah, 5 years, a lot's happened, and yeah, a lot to catch up on.
For sure. I guess just to kick things off, you guys you and the family, you guys are doing good. You ready for the holidays?
Doing well, yeah. I have a daughter who's 4 now, Ida. My wife Katie. So yeah, we're just getting ready for the holidays. Real fun times with Ida. She's you know getting all excited for Christmas and presents and family and cousins and things like that. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is a great time. Do you guys have any sort of traditions or anything that you guys will do?
We're still kind of in the still kind of making those little traditions and seeing what sticks with Ida. She's starting to just get into like some of the movies now. She
Yeah.
hasn't really had the attention span prior to this year, but we've just started introducing a couple of the Christmas movies, so we'll see what she likes. And then just little things, what kind of food are we going to lead out for Santa and things like that. But yeah, other than that, my wife's family's from Pittsburgh, so we see a lot of them. My wife has 2 brothers, so we see them and their family a lot. So yeah, just it's nice. We stay local, and yeah, it's a nice time of year.
That's awesome. Visser, when we talked to him a few weeks ago, mentioned that you guys swapped offices. How's the new office?
Yeah, I have a little bit more square footage now. Yeah, so yeah, I was obviously upstairs in the academy. Dan was downstairs with the first team, and we just did a straight swap. So now I'm alongside Bob and Bushy, and this has moved upstairs, with the academy. So obviously, this still has, his hands kind of on both sides of the things. But yeah, but with me just being fully involved with the first team now on a day to day, that made sense, and yeah, enjoying it.
That's awesome. Something else I just have to give you a shout out for. This past year, I believe you were inducted in your alma mater's Hall of Fame, right?
Correct. Yeah, that was in September. So that kind of it was a very pleasant surprise. The AD reached out to me. She was Brent Stevens. She was the same AD from when I was there. So yeah, they reached out in the summer, told me, and yeah, went back to Charleston in September. Nice little ceremony. My parents came in for the weekend as well, which was really nice. So yeah, it was kind of humbling, but a very nice little experience. And it was the first time my wife and I had been back to Charleston in probably 7, 8 years. So a lot's changed. The campus has really kind of grown. With a cool new soccer facility that they got there. So, Charleston's doing really well. Soccer teams continue to do really well. So it was great to see them.
Now that the Hounds have a Hall of Fame, are you like setting your sights on that, or is it just like if it comes,
No, no. I mean, I've, people have said that to me before, and I sometimes have to remind them, like, listen, I only played 3 years. I had one really good year, 2 okay years. So I think there's a lot of people who are ahead of me in that line. But who knows? Maybe I can make a mark from the coaching side as well, and maybe in the future that's something that happens. But no, there's a lot of great people who've come before me in this organization. So
Listen, man, I have no doubt. You mentioned sort of coaching here a little bit. I said how last time we talked, you were literally just sort of getting your feet wet with the academy.
yeah.
It's been 5 years. So like, tell us a little bit about that experience. You went in not really knowing what to expect. You come out, it seems like it was a success.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, and I'll say as well. I still hope to still play a little bit of a part there too. I think one of the big things that we're still trying to do as a club and as an organization is create that pathway. So on the boys' side, I'll get into it a little bit more detail. But obviously, I've been on the girls' side for the last 5 years. But one thing Bob wants to make sure we're doing is tracking the boys and making sure that number one, we're producing good players, but then also looking to see if we can bring anybody through into the first team. And obviously, we saw that with Anders last year. Who got a little bit of a taste, and we want that to be a regular occurrence. But yeah, going back, 5 years, when I was a player with the Riverhounds, I helped out a little bit with the academy, so I kind of put some time in there and learned what it was all about. I think I always had in the back of my mind, I would say from probably probably from when I started college, and I started doing a little bit of kind of coaching on the side in college, and kind of, I'll say Chris Grassi, who was my second college coach, had a big influence on me, kind of made me really think about going into coaching after I stopped playing. So that was always in the back of my mind. But when I stopped playing with DC, it was kind of it made the most sense, for family wise to move back to Pittsburgh. We were comfortable there. And yeah, to find a role in coaching. So, I came back. Jason Cutney, Scott Gibson at the time, welcomed me back, got me a position, straight away. And yeah, just kind of from that point onwards, it was really about just developing my, coaching ability, developing my coaching style, and really, like you said, just getting my feet wet and seeing what it was all about.
We were talking a little bit off air about you, sort of continuing to play a little bit here and there. Is there anything that you learned in your experience coaching that has sort of now influenced you as a player that maybe you didn't realize when you were a player?
Loads of things, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm sure it's been said before, but if you could kind of just go back, 5, 10 years, and relive your playing career, knowing what you know now, yeah, you pick up so many little things. But yeah, I think that's just seeing things from the other side of the sideline, I guess. Again, it's just been a huge learning curve over the past 5 years of pretty much everything from like how you see the game on like the grandest scale of how you want to set up a team to this tiny little minute details of how you're communicating with certain players, how you're getting the message across to influence people to try and improve them in little areas of their game. So yeah, I've grown so much in the last 5 years, not just within kind of the academy setting and actually being hands on with the players, but also, I've tried to push the boundaries, by doing, I got my A license a couple of years ago. I've done some kind of other kind of online courses and just kind of kept trying to just find as much information as I can out there just to keep to keep trying to improve. And I'm sure that's going to be a continual process over the next however many years I continue to do this.
I mean, it seems like the academy has just sort of exploded in terms of the talent that's coming out of it. On the guys' side, as you mentioned, but
Hmm.
definitely on the women's side as well.
Yeah.
What do you think that you can attribute to sort of the success of that program? Why is it doing as well as it is?
I think it's just honestly steady, continued growth. I mean, when I was playing here, I mean, 10 years ago, back then, I mean, we had very limited space, not a huge number of players, but you could tell what Scott and Jason and John and Justin had put in place was a really very good foundation. And since then, it's just grown and grown and grown. The number of players who've come in have grown. Obviously, the boys and girls are both now playing in the ECNL, and it's just, it's hard to really pinpoint any one thing, but it's just continued devotion to being good coaches, trying to coach the kids in the right way. And I think it's just been just a very natural development. And then obviously being tied in with the pro team helps too. You always have that. Having the fantastic facilities that we've added over the past, starting with Highmark, obviously, but now adding, Montour Junction Sports Complex continues to attract people. But again, I think just hiring good coaches, and just having, a really good kind of way of doing things. And, I think that the success is kind of inevitable, and I only see it continuing to grow.
So, 5 years, you're sort of kind of turning the page here, but
Hmm.
looking back, lots of great moments. What would you
Hmm.
say was sort of your proudest moments from, or one or two of your proudest moments from that time?
Um, Strangely enough, probably was like 2 weeks ago when I had to. So I was obviously still coaching two girls teams at that point, the U19s and the U16s, and I think probably my proudest moment was all the messages of kind of like thanks and support that I got from the players who I'd worked with. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've taken from these past 5 years is like the relationships that I've built with so many of these kind of younger athletes. I mean, because I've coached when I first came back, I started with the U9 boys team, and then the year after I was with a U19 girls team. So I've had like a little bit of everything. I've coached boys, I've coached girls, I've coached all the ages all the way through, which has obviously been great for me to be able to have to adapt and develop my coaching style and learn how to put a message across. But yeah, like I grew so close, and particularly the girls teams that I just left a couple of weeks ago, I grew so close with them over the last 3 or 4 years. Um, and you know, as much as I'm excited for the next chapter, I'm really going to miss working with those players, you know, on a, you know, 3 or 4 times a week, and traveling and playing games and going to showcases and tournaments. I just, you know, built a lot of really good relationships with the team in general, but also with certain individuals as well. Certain individuals who we put a lot of time in and effort together. And you know, they're all going to do, I'm sure, fantastic things. So I'm going to keep track of their progress, but I'm going to miss them a lot.
You mentioned, you know, the pathways there for the guys. We had
Mhm.
talked to Jeff last year about, you know, could we ever potentially get a women's team? Like, would you be interested if there was a women's team and potentially coaching that team?
I think I mean, that has to be a long-term plan. You know, I think that there's been huge success, obviously, with the academy. The men's team continues to do really well. I think the natural progression is having a women's team, and I know there's huge support in the city for that. You know, I can't put a timeline on that, but I'm sure it's something that has been talked about. We as an academy have obviously worked towards that as best we can. This past summer, we put out our first USL Academy women's team, which was a U20 league. Um, and you know, we had players, you know, like Sarah Shapansky, who did so well at Pitt, who came back, and she was an academy player and came back and played for us this summer as well. So the building blocks are definitely there. Again, I don't know how far we are away from having a fully fledged professional women's team
For sure.
a year round, but you know, I know that that's something we're working towards, and you know, hopefully that is something in the next, you know, 5, 10 years that we can say that we have.
Yeah. You know, give the fans sort of a sense of your coaching style. We know how Bob likes to get up and he's on the sideline and he's yelling. Are you going to be right there next to him, or are you sort of the strong and silent type? You know, just sort of sit there. What? How do you like to manage a game?
Um, well, I think my role, you know, with Bob is I think, you know, Bob is obviously very experienced. He's done a fantastic job. I think my job initially is going to be learning from him. You know, yes, giving my input when necessary, but I think part of it is going to be, you know, sitting back and learning from him and seeing what he does on the training ground, how he manages a match day, things like that. So, you know, I don't think you'll see too much of me jumping off the bench and running up and down the sidelines too much too early. But I guess to maybe touch on my coaching style and the way that I've developed over the past 5 or so years with the academy, and obviously academy is different to coaching professional as well. But I think it goes back to, you know, those kind of relationships. I think I've really learned the importance of building the trust with the players, building a relationship with the players, and trying to get them to buy into what you're trying to go towards. I know one thing that Bob, you know, has already mentioned to me that he thinks is going to be something that I can offer this group is maybe working with guys on an individual or kind of smaller, you know, unit basis, and maybe offering some of my expertise, if you like. And again, just trying to maybe, you know, when guys, you know, after training, they want to do some extra work, or if it's on their day off and they want to do some extra work, really trying to get into the kind of the details with those players. So, you know, breaking down video, and I know, and where Bob is probably more focused on the team as a whole, I can go in and maybe try and help those individual players on things that they need work on, or maybe working on groups.
You mentioned sort of being around Highmark, being around Montour. Have you been around the guys? Like, did you have sort of like a friendly relationship before this, and now it's like, all right, I'm boss man coming in, or how's that
No,
going
no,
to work?
no. I mean, you know, so obviously, I mean, yeah, obviously see the guys around quite a bit. Some more than others. You know, I mean, some of the guys you've over the past few years, I've seen quite a lot of. So Danny Griffin, Danny Rivera, Chico, you know, Kenny, I see a bit of. So I've obviously know them, but I haven't been in too close of contact with them. So and since I've come in, you know, a lot of them have kind of gone back home, or so I've seen a few of them around here and there. But yeah, once they get back in January, February, obviously we'll start to kind of really kind of strengthen those relationships. But no, like I say, I mean, I certainly don't see it as a relationship where I'm going to be. And I know you were kind of kidding a little bit, but kind of bossing them around. Like I say, I want to kind of get on the same page as them, and
For sure.
see how I can help them. And Bob is obviously Bob can get after guys a little bit when they need it. And hopefully I can be there to kind of support them. And again, I'm just here to help and learn from Bob, but also offer what I can to the team.
For sure. And we were talking to Visser a little bit about, his new role and this idea of potentially having sort of you look at some of the other teams around the league. Louisville does this. You see this. The Red Bulls do it, where they sort of have a system and a style of play going from the academy all the way up through the pro team. So it's very easy for people to transition from the youth ranks up to the pro ranks. It sounds like we don't have something like that yet. Potentially there is a goal of doing something like that. I was just curious, in terms of how you would approach the academy team, was there a set system or a set style of play that you like to play? And is that similar at all to what Bob likes to do, or how do those two things mesh?
Well, I think the major difference is, again, obviously in the academy, it's very much about the development of the players and the individuals. And when you come to the pro team, it's all about winning. So I think Bob, as he's shown across his whole career, he's very pragmatic. He's going to do what needs to be done to win. I've had good conversations with Bob, even just in the past couple of weeks. There's probably times when he gets pigeonholed a little bit as a defensive-minded coach, but he has, very strong ideas, and he would love to be able to play attractive, expansive football. But being Pittsburgh and maybe not having the hugest budget in the league, we can't necessarily go out and get the players to be able to play that attractive and free flowing style. So we've had to be pragmatic, and obviously that's been very successful. But again, going back to me within the academy, again, I'm trying to develop players who are fearless, who are brave, who are technically proficient. So my style has always been, at least over the past 4 or 5 years, and I think this stems back from when I was a player as well, is encouraging them to play. So, trying to be a possession team, trying to make good decisions of when we can attack quickly, when we have to slow the game down, always trying to be aggressive defensively and trying to press high up the field. But again, I don't think that's any groundbreaking stuff. I think that's, how a lot of coaches and a lot of people want to play nowadays. It seems to be the way that the top teams in the world play. So that's how I've been trying to develop players. And with that, especially on the youth side, comes mistakes, comes losing games, conceding goals, trying to build out from the back. And for me as a coach, learning to accept that. But again, when you go into the professional game, you now have to win games. You have to be more pragmatic. So, there'll be a little bit of a change. But again, this is really what I'm excited to learn from Bob about, because I know he wants to be an attractive team to watch. He wants the fans to come and enjoy watching the Riverhounds play. But at the end of the day, Tuffy wants to win, the fans want to win, and that's the most important thing. So if we have to play in a style that maybe is a little bit ugly on the day to get the win, then we'll have to do that.
For sure. Yeah. No, we talked to Bob. We love Bob. Has Visser given you any sort of suggestions or tips for sort of working with Bob on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, I think I mean, to be fair, Viss and Bushy, they both, in the couple of days as this was all developing, they kind of gave me the introduction to what it's like working on a daily basis. I mean, the one thing I'll say, I mean, like I say, even just in the past couple of weeks, I mean, Bob, he has so many, he's so thoughtful about the game, and he's incredibly intelligent, and he's very kind of calculated in all the decisions he makes, and I'm learning that already. So yeah, I'm just excited to learn from him, learn his process, and hopefully, when the time comes for me to move on and go off on my own way, then I think I'll be a much better coach having worked with him.
For sure. We, sort of looking at the team now and the guys that you're going to be working with,
Yeah.
Something that we were struggling with was the fact that, we have this team in 2023, we win the Players' Shield. So like statistically, we're the best team in the league. And then you go into the first game of the playoffs and you lose. So as you head into the offseason, and I know it's still early days and you're getting your feet wet and all of that, but how do you assess what happened last year? We had actually put out a poll. I've mentioned this a few times. We put out a poll where I said, part of me feels like if you could guarantee that we win the Player Shield the next 5 years, but we always go out in the first round of the playoffs, I might take that, because that
Yeah,
means that you had a fantastic season.
yeah,
And like statistically, that probably coincides with a nice Open Cup run like we had this year. Like so many things happened this year. And then it just doesn't happen in the playoffs. Like I struggle to deal with, like, what does that mean? How do you
yeah.
fix anything? Do you not fix anything? How do you sort of look at this past year and think about that this offseason?
Yeah, it's tough because I think, especially with me coming from, Europe and England, the big prize is winning the regular season, if you like.
Yeah.
That for me shows who was the best team over the course of the season. And then the playoffs are just kind of a one and done thing where, as we saw against Detroit, anything can happen on the night. And, I think Bob would be the first to admit it wasn't our best performance, but Detroit came in with a game plan, stifled us, made it difficult. And so that can happen. So, I don't think you need to change too much. I think very good squad last year, obviously a fantastic record. Of course, we'll bring new players in and players will move on, as we've already seen during this off season. But I think again, it's trying to build on last year, trying to be a little bit better than we were last year, improving in areas that we need to improve, replacing players we need to replace. But I agree with you. I think if you get offered the top spot for the next 5 years, I mean that you're doing something right, and then maybe there's just something we've got to do as we close in on those playoffs. Maybe a little bit of a mentality switch, because as a club we haven't probably succeeded in the playoffs over the past several years, and so that's probably a hump we need to get over. Um, but again, I think Bob's been around it long enough. I think he probably knows what it takes. But as you know, one night can just kind of knock it all down. So yeah, I think build on last year, try and be a little bit better than we were last year. We know other teams are going to improve. And yeah, as those playoffs start approaching, maybe just kind of work a little bit harder on that mentality side of things, and work harder to prepare for playoffs. Because I know there was a lot of celebration on the Supporters Shield, and maybe there's a little hangover effect from that. So maybe next year, if we do get ourselves into that position again, it's like, all right, like a little bit more serious this time. We celebrate the Supporters Shield less, and we kind of focus on the playoffs. But hopefully, that's the bridge we can cross when we get there.
For sure. We got 11 guys that are returning that we know of, like options and contracts. That's the most that have ever sort of returned in a Lily era.
Mhm.
In your opinion, I mean, obviously we need like bodies, but is there something that you'd like to see added to this team that you think will help us get over the hump, or something that you're telling Bob, like, hey, I think we should look for this offseason?
I'm not telling Bob anything. Yeah, I mean, so you know,
Visser said something similar, by the way. So
yeah, no, Bob. I mean, Bob is very clear on what we need to add. And we're obviously working on that on a daily basis now in terms of bringing guys to look at over the winter into preseason next year. So that's kind of the majority of our work right now is planning and adding players for next season. As Vis said, I mean, pretty much every position we're looking to add players in right now. Obviously, I think that the most obvious one is probably replacing Arturo at the back. He had such a fantastic year last year, so kind of filling the hole that he's left. And then I think making sure that we have goals at the top end of the field as well. I think those are the two big areas right now. But just trying to improve on every position. If the players that Bob has brought back, he has a lot of trust in, has a lot of faith in, and they wouldn't be coming back if he didn't. And then just trying to fill in those holes around him. But again, the conversations I've had with Bob, he's happy with where we're at, and he's done this so many times before. So we're kind of in a period right now where we're happy, and we're just kind of working hard and making sure that we have some some good options kind of heading into January.
yeah. You mentioned sort of, the potential of you sort of learning under Bob and sort of maybe going off on your own at some point. Do you have like aspirations of eventually being a manager somewhere else, or sort of being a head manager somewhere? Or do you have like a 5-year plan?
No, I don't have a 5-year plan. I've always found I mean, yeah, you kind of have those kind of goals in the back of your mind. You
Mhm.
know, from a playing standpoint, the goal was always to play professionally, but sometimes the goalposts move on those. Up until I was 18, the aim was to play in the Premier League, and then those kind of go up in flames, and then all of a sudden you readjust. So then the goal was to just play professionally in America. Then you get to the USL and MLS. So no, I don't have a set goal in mind, but I certainly do want to stay in coaching. And at some point probably yes, be a head coach, but I'm really not looking too far ahead. And I've always found just in life that if you just kind of put everything into what you're doing right now, then the opportunities generally will come along, when you need them. And that's kind of how this has come along. I was working with the academy, Bob probably knew that I was looking for something like this, whether it was here or whether it was somewhere else. Eventually, as I started to get itchy feet and as I started to kind of feel as though I was ready for that next step. And unfortunately, I was able to stay in Pittsburgh and stay with the Riverhounds to do that. So, like I said, I just want to be the absolute best assistant coach that I can be for the Riverhounds, whether that's 2 years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever that might be, and then we'll see what's next.
Love it. You mentioned the Premier League. We can see the Everton kits hanging up behind you. I got to
Yeah,
ask you, what's your take on all the Everton nonsense, man?
it's been a really really tough last few years. I mean, it's really tested my patience, and there's been plenty of times where I've just not watched because I couldn't. I mean, 2 years ago and then last season, I was convinced that we were going to get relegated, and we somehow escaped. Um, and then this year, just when everything started to look like we'd kind of turned the corner and results were picking up, we get slapped with the 10 point deduction. So, but the one thing I will say is we're trending in the right direction. We're
Yeah.
actually playing a lot better. Another good result this past weekend, and
Hmm.
we're still now only 2 points inside the relegation zone. So I think if you were to kind of extrapolate the season out over the next 25 games, we're probably safe.
Yeah.
But it's Everton, and you never know. You never know what they're gonna never know what they're gonna do next week. So
I think you guys will get out.
yeah,
I got
yeah,
high hopes for you for sure.
yeah,
Um, I guess closing thought here, you'll be stepping back onto Highmark this time as a coach on the
yeah.
sidelines. What are you most looking forward to that first home game?
Um, there's something just about like game days in general, professional game days in general, but game days under the lights at Highmark, Steel Army, like there's just something about it, like that aura that it gives you, that feeling that it gives you. So even though I won't be stepping on as a player, I'm just kind of excited to get those butterflies back in my stomach, to just kind of hear that drum beating and kind of thudding through your chest a little bit. You know, yeah, there's just something about that I've missed a lot since I stopped playing. And yeah, just the goal for me. We talk about goals. I mean, the goal for me when I stopped playing and when I went into coaching was to try and get back into the professional game in some capacity. And this is a fantastic opportunity. So yeah, just I'm excited to see what next season holds, and excited to just kind of be back at Highmark under the lights, and kind of hearing the Steel Army pound away all night.
That's awesome. Last question. Is Ida gonna play?
She actually just got home tonight, actually, from grassroots. So she's been doing Riverhounds grassroots on Monday evenings. Right now, I don't really think she understands soccer too much. She just runs around. They were doing 1v1s tonight, and she kept getting beat. So she's got a little ways to go. But no, she's surrounded by soccer. Obviously, with me, my wife played soccer too, so she comes from a soccer family. She doesn't. She every now and again she'll watch Everton with me on a weekend. And yeah, but if she wants to play, she'll play. She's also signed up for gymnastics. She's signed up for dance. So whatever she wants to do, I'm sure she'll do.
That's awesome. Well, Rob, I always appreciate talking to you. We got to make sure it's not another 5 years before we catch up again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just so much great stuff going on. Thank you again for stopping by. Hopefully, your family have a fantastic holiday. Best of
Thank you.
luck with the off season. First off season as a assistant at the pro level.
Yeah.
I think everyone has really high hopes, and we're all pulling for you. So I think this is gonna be great.
Thank you, Mike. And yeah, happy holidays to you and your family, and really appreciate you guys having me back on.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you
All
soon.
right. See
Bye.
ya.
Absolutely love talking to Rob Vincent. Like I said, completely shocked when I look back and it had been 5 years. But such a great guy, such a great story. Absolutely love it. As we talked about, the Hounds did announce some news. We've seen that there are 11 players back, but we're going to wait. Basically, everybody else was sort of off doing other stuff this evening, so I'm sort of picking up the pieces here. But we did also hear that Ordonez is left, as Rob had mentioned. And we also got word today that Joe Farrell is off to Hartford. Hopefully, Ordonez isn't going to be in the East. There was some talk, when we talked to Visser about potentially, international news. It would be fantastic if Ordonez got a shot overseas, but we will see. Obviously, a lot going on. It's the off season. There's lots of other people that we're looking forward to talking to. Just absolutely delighted to have Rob on. Almost giddy. I don't get nervous for these types of things. I don't know. With Rob, I always get nervous, but such a great guy. We had such a good time talking offline as well. So I think it's going to be a really good, really, really good setup for the Hounds this year. So that's what we got for this one. Everybody, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We should have another show here before the holidays, but we will see. Otherwise, thanks, everybody. We will talk to you very, very soon.